Hey, Genesis Fractal. See if these cool visuals work. Hopefully it doesn't look too choppy on the final video. Anyway, I have a bunch of thoughts rolling around in my head that I wanted to talk about. I'm not going to write an article on this stuff for two reasons. One, I don't really have the time right now, and two, everything I say here is not formal. The rest of the Fractally team may disagree to whatever extent with what I'm about to say. These are just some of my own thoughts that hopefully can spark some discussion and also clarify my own thoughts to myself. Anyway, in a recent consensus meeting for the Genesis Fractal, there was a moment where one of the community members in my group got rather emotional and brought up a number of things he felt strongly about. I'm sure other people have or have had similar thoughts at some point, so I want to voice my opinion on them. So first of all, this individual specifically singled out a second member of our breakout group and essentially chastised him. His point was that they had been randomly grouped together in several breakout rooms over multiple weeks, and this second person had always ranked his own contributions relatively higher than his contributions, and the person complaining's contributions. So, firstly, I have to say this isn't a fair criticism. First of all, I do think it's rather rude to make it so personal in public. No one is out to hurt or offend anyone else in the community. More importantly, there isn't a correct rank ordering, and anyone is free to argue for the rank ordering of contributions that they feel is the most fair. That's really all I have to say about this point. As much as possible, we need to not take these rankings personally and try to understand these orderings as signals for what type of contributions are valued the most. The second concern brought up by this individual was that his contributions had generally not yet been ranked by the community at the level that he thought that they should be ranked at. I suppose I don't have too much to say here again, other than no one's contributions innately deserve any particular ranking. If the consensus of the community continues to align with my rankings of my own contributions, then that should be a signal that I am out of alignment with the rest of the community. A low ranking in a previous week is not in and of itself evidence that my contributions deserve a higher rank. And if I rank someone's contributions lowly in 1 week, that does not mean I owe that contribution a higher rank next week. That's not how this is meant to work. Okay, the third concern brought up by this individual is the one that I'll spend, I think, probably most of the time here discussing, because frankly it's the most interesting. I think it has the most validity. The concern was that the Fractally team is being compensated outside of the community for their efforts, and that therefore justifies correspondingly discounting their contributions to the community. I don't actually think this is a statement about the Fractally team. It's really a more general point about how best to run a fractal democracy. Like, if one is being paid in some way outside of the community currency or respect, then isn't it double dipping then to also gain community respect for those same contributions? I've actually spent quite a bit of time thinking about this over the past week, and I can pretty easily see that perspective. I actually think there's a very legitimate point to be made here, so I'm going to try to make the strongest version of it. So in a given community, there are people who have the means to work full-time for the community, maybe because someone's paying them to do it, or they're independently wealthy or retired or whatever. But there are others who cannot afford to work full-time for the community, even if they wanted to. So their contributions might have to be in the evenings or weekends on top of a regular full-time job. So what do we do with that real disparity? It's only natural, I think, that the people who happen to be able to work full-time are able to accomplish more. Is it fair that their contributions should always be weighted above the rest? This actually isn't a new idea either, believe it or not. In proof of stake, do you want the person with the most stake in charge of the community? What if someone has objectively less stake, but relative to their own means, they're taking a bigger risk? Like if I only own 100 EOS, for example, but that's all of my savings, which I have in EOS because I really love and believe in the project. Should that be valued more or less than someone who's much wealthier with 1,000 EOS, but for whom losing that 1,000 EOS would basically be negligible? It's sort of a similar situation here in fractal democracy. Like, what if someone has objectively smaller contributions, but relative to their own means, their contributions demonstrate a willingness to work the hardest and take the biggest personal risks for the community? So this is a really difficult topic with no clear answer to me, at least philosophically. One benefit I think we do have in fractal governance over proof of stake regarding this concern is that we actually use subjective judgment in our consensus mechanism. I think it's right to subjectively give a lot of respect to those people who are busting their asses to make time they probably don't have in their life to contribute to the community. That's the type of person I want in my community. Not only earning respect to hopefully someday be a full-time contributor, but also, if they want, at the governance table, helping to move the community forward politically. So I think you might be able to identify in your breakout groups through subjective means who is working really hard or going above and beyond relative to their own means. And I don't think it's wrong to consider that passion in your evaluation of contributions. Now, all of that said, let me also respond to the specific allegations that it's double dipping or that people being paid full time should have their contributions discounted. Is it double dipping if I choose to work for a company that pays me and gives me equity? Or maybe it's triple dipping if I also get benefits, or quadruple dipping because I also earn the respect of my peers. I don't think this is the right way to do the math. It's not that for one type of task, one can only receive one type of payment and everything else would be a form of double dipping. All the various benefits I receive from working on something play into the same single cost-benefit analysis that I'm doing to determine how to spend my time. So for a real-life example, those in the Genesis fractal might not place much value on the code I wrote for the Eden fractal, since they don't directly see most of the benefit of that code. They might value it a little bit for the effect that they hope it might have on furthering the reach of fractal governance, and that's fine. It's not double dipping if more than one community appreciates me for the work that I do, any more than it's double dipping if more than one person appreciates the work that I do. Another point I thought of is that respect, or currency, like the currency of one community is not fungible with the respect of a different community or with fiat money, US dollars, right? Like if I own one Bitcoin, what is the value of that Bitcoin to me? I can tell you what, it's certainly not the current price. I value my Bitcoin much more than whatever the market calls its current USD price. That's why I'm not selling, and it's why I wouldn't sell, even if the price rose significantly. So Bitcoin is not fungible with its price in USD. So even in the presence of some price discovery or relative market value between respect and US dollars, which we don't even have, but it's still not possible to accurately discount contributions based on outside payment, because anyone trying to do that calculus is putting themselves in the position of declaring how much someone else should value community respect. And I think for me, the final nail in this coffin is just imagining the impossibility of doing this kind of discounting at scale. Imagine a fractal with hundreds or thousands of members participating in governance. It's not possible to know who among those contributors are getting external payment for their efforts. All I can know is who is making what contributions. So I guess to summarize my overall response to this concern, I think the general point is valid, that personal sacrifices are relevant to how much we might value contributions. I also think at scale, it won't be possible to know who's getting paid externally and how much. So that can't be part of the consensus mechanism. And even if it were possible to know, I'm not actually convinced that it's justified to discount someone's contributions solely because they got external payment. And even if it were justified, it's still not possible to know by how much one should discount the contribution. So those are my thoughts. Sorry if it was a bit rambly. I just felt that there were a number of different things I wanted to talk about. It's hard to find the time to talk about them sometimes on Saturdays with how much time everybody's already giving just to the meeting itself. I also think it's just really cool that I can make a quick recording like this, and it's part of our consensus mechanism. Any discussion this sparks or future discussions we have about things like this, it all feeds back into forming our collective opinions on these things, and that affects how we contribute and how we participate in meetings. So this discussion is, in some real way, part of fractal consensus, which is just pretty cool. That's all. And thanks for listening, whoever you are, and I'll see you on Saturday.